"Evening, officers," I said calmly. "Something I can help you with?" Officer 1, older, with a weary look that suggested he'd seen far too much suburban drama, sighed. "Sir, we received a complaint about, he gestured vaguely at my car. "Flashing lights. A public nuisance?" "Oh, these lights?" I said, feigning surprise. I flipped the switch again for a brief demonstration. The driveway instantly turned into Studio 54. "Just testing out my new solar-powered vehicle safety and aesthetic enhancement system. Runs entirely off this panel right here." I pointed to the roof. "Makes absolutely no noise." I switched it off again before anyone had a seizure. Officer 2, younger, was visibly fighting a smirk. "Safety. Enhancement?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Absolutely," I said earnestly. "Increases nighttime visibility for the vehicle when parked. Prevents, unforeseen driveway collisions. Discourages prowlers with its unpredictable light patterns." Karen, unable to contain herself, marched over. "It's blinding, officers! It's a menace! It shines right into my bedroom! There have to be rules against that!" She gestured wildly at the car, which sat innocently dark for the moment. The officers exchanged a look. Officer 1 got on his radio, then consulted a tablet. "Well, sir," he said after a moment, "as long as the vehicle is legally parked on your private property and the lights aren't aimed directly at traffic or creating a hazardous glare on the public roadway, there doesn't seem to be a specific ordinance prohibiting decorative lighting on a parked vehicle. My name is Dave, and up until last Tuesday, my life was aggressively, wonderfully average. I work from home doing something vaguely technical with computers that makes people's eyes glaze over when I try to explain it. I live in a neighborhood that prides itself on its beigeness, beige houses, beige fences, beige minivans driven by beige people wearing beige slacks. It's the kind of place where the height of excitement is comparing lawn fertilization schedules. And honestly, I was mostly okay with that. Give me decent Wi-Fi, a comfortable couch, and minimal human interaction before noon, and I'm golden. Then there's my car, affectionately known as the Tangerine Dream. She's a 2018 Ford Fusion factory paint job, listed officially as Sunset Metallic. It's basically a burnt orange. Not neon, not glow-in-the-dark, just orange. Like a tasteful pumpkin spice latte decided to become a mid-size sedan. I love this car. It's got decent mileage. The Bluetooth usually connects on the first try, and it stands out just enough in a parking lot that I don't accidentally try to unlock 3 identical silver SUVs before finding mine. In the context of Oak Haven Estates, where architectural flair means choosing off-white instead of eggshell for your trim, the Tangerine Dream might as well be a UFO painted by Lisa Frank. But it's my UFO. And crucially, it broke 0 rules. 0. HOA bylaws dictate lawn height, trash can visibility, and the precise shade of taupe your mailbox can be. But automotive color? Not a word. Believe me, I checked. Multiple times. Which brings me to Karen. Karen lives directly across the street. Her lawn looks like it was cut with cuticle scissors and a laser level. Her wind chimes play gentle, non-offensive melodies that somehow still manage to set my teeth on edge. She's the self-appointed guardian of Oak Haven's aesthetic soul, the kind of person who'll leave a laminated note on your windshield if your tire is half an inch onto the sidewalk. I was out washing the Tangerine Dream last Tuesday, enjoying the sunshine, earbuds blasting some classic rock. Suds flew, birds chirped. It was aggressively pleasant. Until a shadow fell over me. I pulled out an earbud. "David?" Karen stood on the edge of my driveway, arms crossed, lips pursed so tight they'd practically vanished. She wore a visor, crisp white tennis shorts, and an expression usually reserved for discovering a slug infestation in one's prize-winning petunias. "Hey, Karen," I said, trying for neighborly. Nice day, huh? It was, she clipped, her eyes fixed on my car like it had personally offended her ancestors. David, we need to talk about this. Vehicle. The Tangerine Dream? I patted its wet hood fondly. What about her? That color, she said, shuddering delicately. It's quite loud, isn't it? I looked at my car. It was orange. It was sitting silently in my driveway. Loud? Visually loud, she clarified, as if explaining quantum physics to a toddler. It doesn't really fit the harmony of the neighborhood, does it? It's rather jarring. An eyesore, frankly. I blinked. Suds dripped from my sponge. It's a factory color, Karen. Ford calls it sunset metallic. Ford, she sniffed, dismissing the entire automotive giant with a wave of her hand. Honestly, David, it lowers the tone. People have commented. I sincerely doubted anyone but Karen had commented, unless it was to say, hey, cool car color. But I just said, it's just a car color, Karen. It's not hurting anyone. It's hurting the aesthetic integrity of Oak Haven Estates, she insisted. Have you considered, perhaps, getting it repainted, something more? Neutral, like beige? Or a nice greige? Beige. She wanted me to repaint my perfectly good factory orange car beige. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of it. I think my brain actually short-circuited for a second. No, Karen, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I have not considered repainting my car beige. I happen to like sunset metallic. She drew herself up. Well, I'm just saying, David, for the good of the community. Think about it. She turned on her heel and marched back across the street, leaving me standing there, sponge in hand, dripping soapy water and righteous indignation onto my beige concrete driveway. An eyesore, huh? Jarring? Lowering the tone? The nerve. I finished washing the car in a simmering rage, buffing the sunset metallic paint until it gleamed defiantly under the afternoon sun. That should have been the end of it, a typical weird neighbor interaction. But Karen wasn't typical. 3 days later, tucked under my windshield wiper, was a crisp white envelope. Inside, on heavy cardstock, was a typed letter. Dear resident, it has come to the attention of concerned neighbors that the color of the vehicle frequently parked at this address, license plate, my plate number, yes, she included it, is causing significant aesthetic disharmony within our community. While we appreciate individual expression, the current shade, described as sunset metallic, is considered by many to be unduly vibrant and out of step with the established visual standards of Oak Haven Estates. We strongly encourage you to consider options more in keeping with our shared community values. Perhaps a muted earth tone or a classic neutral. Sincerely, concerned neighbors, and the Oak Haven Aesthetics Committee, unofficial. There was no official HOA letterhead. No actual committee exists. It was just Karen, weaponizing passive aggression and a laser printer. Aesthetic disharmony? Unduly vibrant? Shared community values that apparently included mandatory beigeness? That was it. The line hadn't just been crossed, it had been obliterated. She wanted an eyesore? She wanted jarring? She wanted something that screamed aesthetic disharmony? Oh, I'd give it to her. I went inside, poured myself a very large coffee, and opened my laptop. Operation Driveway Disco was officially a go. My first thought was simple. Bumper stickers. Hundreds of them. The tackiest, most obnoxious ones I could find. But that felt temporary, easily removable. No, this needed to be bigger, more luminous. What about repainting it myself? Maybe a nice neon green with purple polka dots. Tempting, but expensive, and probably actually against some rule somewhere. Plus, I have zero artistic talent. It would look less like rebellion and more like a kindergarten art project gone wrong. I needed something annoying, highly visible, technically legal on my property, and utterly, gloriously pointless. Something that screamed, "I see your beige and raise you fabulous!" And then, scrolling through the weirder corners of the internet, I saw it. A solar-powered garden light, shaped like a gnome holding a tiny disco ball. The heavens opened. Angels sang. Probably Donna Summer. Solar-powered disco lights. It was perfect. Eco-friendly annoyance. It wouldn't violate noise ordinances, at least not without modifications. It wouldn't require running extension cords across the lawn, a definite HOA violation. It would be utterly silent, yet visually deafening. And best of all, it would be parked squarely on my property, aimed squarely at her sense of beige superiority. The online rabbit hole I fell down was deep and sparkly. I researched mini disco balls, rotating multicolored LED fixtures, often marketed for dorm rooms or chill vibes, weatherproof LED strips, small solar panels designed for RVs or boats, charge controllers, deep cycle batteries. My Amazon cart started to look like a rave threw up on an electronics store. I watched shaky YouTube tutorials filmed in dimly lit garages by guys named Laser Larry and Sparky Steve, learning about wattage, amperage, and the critical importance of not accidentally electrocuting yourself while wiring up 12 volts of pure spite. I briefly considered adding a laser light show component, the kind that projects little green and red dots, but decided that might actually interfere with aircraft and bring the FAA down on me. Let's keep it annoying, but vaguely legal-ish. After mapping out a potential system, a decent-sized solar panel on the roof, a battery hidden in the trunk, wires running to a collection of lights mounted strategically on the roof rack I'd need to install. I realized this was slightly beyond my plug-it-in and hope for the best level of electrical expertise. Messing with car batteries and solar panels felt like a good way to either set the tangerine dream on fire or give myself a crash course in defibrillation. I needed a professional, or at least someone who owned a soldering iron and wasn't afraid to use it. My first call was to Honest Abe's Auto Electrics. "Yeah, Honest Abe's." The voice sounded tired, like it had already dealt with 3 dead alternators and a squirrel infestation in a dashboard that morning. "Hi," I began, trying to sound normal. "I have a custom lighting project for my car." "Okay," Abe drawled. "Headlights? Taillights? Underglow?" No, more like disco lights. On the roof, solar-powered. For when it's parked." Silence, then a heavy sigh. "You want disco lights, solar-powered, on a parked car? For why?" Safety?" I tried weakly. "Increased nighttime visibility?" "Right. Look, buddy, we fix wiring. We don't do whatever that is. Is this even legal?" "It's on my property." "Yeah, well, we don't do it. Try. I don't know, a party supply store?" Click. Okay. Next, I emailed Extreme Customs, a place with a flaming skull logo and pictures of cars with giant spoilers and neon ground effects. Their emailed quote came back within an hour. It involved chrome plating, strobe lights synced to bass drops, requiring a subwoofer install, and a price tag that could have bought me a second, slightly used Tangerine Dream. Not quite the vibe. Or the budget. Defeated, I turned to Craigslist and local forums, searching for custom electronics, solar projects, weird wiring jobs. Tucked away in a forum thread about DIY ham radios, I found a mention of Gus's Gadgets and Gizmos, no job too weird. The website, if you could call it that, looked like it was designed in 1998. Animated GIFs of spinning gears, clashing background colors, Comic Sans font. But the description promised expertise in solar, low voltage, LEDs, audio-visual mayhem, and general electronic wizardry. This felt promisingly unhinged. Gus's workshop was located in a slightly sketchy industrial park on the edge of town. The sign was hand-painted. Inside, it was glorious chaos. Shelves overflowed with circuit boards, tangled wires, old radios, dismantled computers, and things I couldn't even identify. It smelled faintly of solder, ozone, and maybe patchouli. Behind a counter piled high with components sat Gus. He looked exactly like his website felt. 60s, maybe early 70s, with a long gray ponytail, wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose, and a faded, Grateful Dead t-shirt. "Help ya?" he asked, looking up from a circuit board he was poking with a soldering iron. I took a deep breath. "Hi, Gus. I have a project. It's a bit unusual." "Unusual is my middle name," he grinned, showing surprisingly white teeth. "Or it would be if my parents weren't squares. Lay it on me." "Okay," I said. "I want to install solar-powered disco lights on my car to run while it's parked in my driveway." Gus put down his soldering iron. His eyes lit up behind his glasses. He didn't ask why. He didn't question the legality or sanity. He just leaned forward, rubbing his hands together. "Solar-powered. Disco. Lights?" he repeated slowly, savoring each word. "On a car? Just sitting there? Far out, man. Totally far out. What are we talking? Classic mirror ball, rotating mushrooms, LED strips, strobes? We could sync it to music, or maybe a motion sensor. Ooh, or temperature-controlled color changes." I stammered, overwhelmed by his immediate, unbridled enthusiasm. "Maybe start with a mirror ball and some rotating colored lights, and LED strips seem cool. Solar-powered is key." Right on, right on. Gotta harness that free cosmic energy, man." Gus started sketching on a greasy napkin. "Okay, so we need a panel, decent wattage, maybe 100 watts. MPPT charge controller, gotta be efficient. Deep cycle marine battery, sealed AGM probably best, tucked away somewhere. Then run the wiring, waterproof connectors, marine-grade switches. We can put the main switch inside, maybe a remote. How stealth do you want to be?" "Stealth isn't really the goal," I admitted. "The goal is visible." Gus cackled. "Righteous. Visible it is. We'll make that thing shine brighter than a supernova on Neptune, man." We spent the next hour hashing out the details. Gus knew his stuff, rattling off specs and component recommendations. He suggested mounting the lights on a removable roof rack for easier maintenance, and plausible deniability if the HOA really lost its mind. He even had a source for weatherproof disco balls. The price he quoted was reasonable, especially considering the sheer weirdness of the request. He asked for half up front, preferably in cash. Keeps the vibes pure, you know? Less corporate interference. I happily agreed. Operation Driveway Disco had found its chief engineer. Installation day arrived, bright and sunny, perfect for charging the future annoyance machine. Gus pulled up in his battered van, which looked like it ran on hope and leftover electrical tape. He unloaded boxes filled with wires, connectors, drill bits, and an assortment of light fixtures that looked even more gloriously tacky in person than they had online. "All right, Davo," Gus announced, clapping his hands together. "Let's make some magic, or at least some seriously questionable lighting choices." We started with the roof rack, clamping it onto the Tangerine Dreams roof. So far, so normal. Then came the drilling. Gus, despite his eccentricities, was methodical. He carefully measured, marked, and drilled small holes through the roof rack bars, not the car roof, thank God, to mount the fixtures and run the wires. Still, every buzz of the drill made me wince. Next came the solar panel. It was a sleek black rectangle, about 3 feet by 2 feet. Gus expertly mounted it on the rear section of the roof rack, angling it slightly for maximum sun exposure. Wires snaked down, tucked neatly along the rack supports. Then, the main event, the lights. A medium-sized, surprisingly robust-looking disco ball went dead center. Flanking it were two multicolored, rotating LED mushroom lights. Along the front and back edges of the rack, Gus carefully attached weatherproof LED strips. It looked insane. Like my sensible sedan had decided to pursue a midlife crisis career as a mobile DJ booth. Neighbors started noticing. Mrs. Henderson from 2 doors down paused her gardening to stare, slack-jawed. Young Timmy Miller rode his bike past 3 times, eyes wide, and across the street, curtains twitched in Karen's front window. I could feel her gaze burning into my back. "All right, moment of truth for the main power line," Gus declared, holding 2 wires perilously close to the terminals of the deep cycle battery he'd secured in my trunk. "Hold this, Davo. No, the other this. The one with the black stripe, not the red one. Unless you want a free perm." I held the wire with trembling fingers, visions of exploding batteries dancing in my head. Gus expertly connected everything, muttering about ohms and amps. He installed a master switch panel discreetly under the dashboard. Just as Gus was tightening the last connection, Karen marched across her perfect lawn and stopped at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed. Her face was a thundercloud. "David," she said, her voice tight with disapproval, "what on earth are you doing to that poor vehicle? It looks like a carnival ride." Gus, bless his hippie heart, wiped his greasy hands on his jeans and beamed at her. "Just adding some safety features, ma'am. Enhancing nighttime visibility. State-of-the-art solar-powered illumination system." It's tacky," Karen sputtered. "Tacky?" Gus looked genuinely puzzled. "No, ma'am, this is cutting-edge stuff, all marine-grade components. Very reliable." Dave chimed in, unable to resist. "Just trying to brighten up the neighborhood, Karen. Bring a little joy. You know, combat all the beige." Karen's eyes narrowed. She looked from me to Gus, to the monstrosity taking shape on my car roof, and back again. Without another word, she spun on her heel and retreated into her fortress of neutrality. "Phase 1 of psychological warfare complete," Gus whispered conspiratorially, giving me a thumbs up. By late afternoon, the installation was done. The battery was charging nicely under the relentless sun. "Okay," Gus said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Let's try a daytime test. Won't be spectacular, but we should see if the circuits are happy." He flipped the master switch. A few of the LEDs on the strips blinked weakly. The mushroom lights gave a pathetic flicker. The disco ball remained stubbornly inert. My heart sank. All that effort, all that money, for a few sad blinks? "Is that it?" Gus chuckled. "Patience, young grasshopper. The sun needs to pour its sweet, sweet juice into that battery. It's like marinating tofu, man. Takes time. But tonight, tonight she'll sing the song of 1,000 synchronized photons." He packed up his tools, promised to be available by phone for troubleshooting, collected the second half of his payment, in cash naturally, and rattled off in his van, leaving me alone with my potentially impotent disco car. I spent the rest of the afternoon pretending to work, but mostly just staring out the window at the car. Anxiety warring with anticipation, Karen pointedly kept her blinds closed. As dusk began to settle, casting long shadows across the beige landscape of Oakhaven Estates, my stomach did nervous flip-flops. This was it, the moment of truth. Would it be a glorious beacon of passive-aggressive triumph, or an embarrassing, expensive fizzle? I waited until full dark. The streetlights hummed. A dog barked in the distance. Taking a deep breath, I walked outside, slipped into the driver's seat, even though I wasn't going anywhere, and reached for the master switch Gus had installed. My hand hovered over it. This felt monumentally stupid, and absolutely necessary. I flipped the switch. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, wham! My driveway, my garage door, the front of my house, and, oh, sweet satisfaction. The entire front facade of Karen's meticulously maintained beige palace were bathed in sweeping, swirling, strobing beams of red, blue, green, yellow, and purple light. The mushroom lights spun enthusiastically, casting psychedelic patterns. The LED strips pulsed and chased each other in a riot of color. And the disco ball, catching beams from the mushrooms, scattered hundreds of tiny, dancing squares of light across everything. The lawn, the sidewalk, Karen's prize-winning rose bushes. It was silent. Utterly, completely silent. But visually, it was the loudest thing Oakhaven Estates had ever witnessed. It was glorious. It was obnoxious. It was everything I had hoped for, and so much more. A grin spread across my face, wide and uncontrollable. I leaned back in the seat, bathed in the tacky rainbow glow, feeling a sense of profound, idiotic accomplishment. It took approximately 30 seconds for the reaction. A window slammed open across the street. "David, what is that? What in God's name is that?" Turn it off this instant." I just sat there, grinning, and gave a cheerful little wave towards her window, my silhouette illuminated by rotating waves of green and blue. Operation Driveway Disco was a resounding success. The flashing lights arrived about 15 minutes later. Not the fun, colorful kind currently bathing my property, but the official red and blue kind. A police cruiser pulled up, its own lights adding to the general kaleidoscopic chaos illuminating the street. 2 officers got out, looking bewildered. Karen was already on her lawn, practically vibrating with indignation, pointing a shaking finger at my car. I killed the disco lights, reluctantly, and got out to meet the officers, aiming for an expression of polite confusion. "Evening, officers," I said calmly. "Something I can help you with?" Officer 1, older, with a weary look that suggested he'd seen far too much suburban drama, sighed. "Sir, we received a complaint about, He gestured vaguely at my car. "Flashing lights? A public nuisance?" "Oh, these lights?" I said, feigning surprise. I flipped the switch again for a brief demonstration. The driveway instantly turned into Studio 54. "Just testing out my new solar-powered vehicle safety and aesthetic enhancement system. Runs entirely off this panel right here." I pointed to the roof. Makes absolutely no noise. I switched it off again before anyone had a seizure. Officer 2, younger, was visibly fighting a smirk. "Safety. Enhancement?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Absolutely," I said earnestly. "Increases nighttime visibility for the vehicle when parked. Prevents, unforeseen driveway collisions. Discourages prowlers with its unpredictable light patterns." Karen, unable to contain herself, marched over. "It's blinding, officers. It's a menace. It shines right into my bedroom. There have to be rules against that." She gestured wildly at the car, which sat innocently dark for the moment. The officers exchanged a look. Officer 1 got on his radio, then consulted a tablet. "Well, sir," he said after a moment, "as long as the vehicle is legally parked on your private property, and the lights aren't aimed directly at traffic or creating a hazardous glare on the public roadway. There doesn't seem to be a specific ordinance prohibiting decorative lighting on a parked vehicle." My heart soared. "Legal, mostly." "However," Officer 1 continued, fixing me with a stern look, "if we get repeated calls about it being a disturbance, shining into windows late at night, causing genuine annoyance to multiple neighbors, we might have to look at broader nuisance ordinances. Try to be considerate." "Of course, officer," I said smoothly. "Just ensuring the system works. Wouldn't want faulty wiring, you know." Karen sputtered. But it's hideous. It's... Officer 2 cut her off gently. Ma'am, unfortunately, hideous isn't technically a violation, as long as he's on his own property and not creating a hazard. He shrugged apologetically. They gave me another warning look, advised Karen to try closing her blinds, and retreated to their cruiser, doubtless radioing in the weirdest call of their shift. As soon as they drove off, I flipped the lights back on. Maybe not full blast, perhaps I switched it to a gentle, color-shifting fade pattern as a magnificent gesture of consideration. Karen let out an audible shriek and slammed her front door. Round 1. Dave. The next few days were interesting. The disco dream became the talk of Oak Haven Estates. Walking to the mailbox became an adventure. Mrs. Henderson gave me a conspiratorial wink. Mr. Gable from down the street stopped his power walking to chuckle and say, "Giving Karen a run for her money, eh, Dave? Good on ya." Young Timmy Miller and his friends started riding their bikes slowly past my house after dusk, pointing and giggling. Naturally, not everyone was amused. My immediate next-door neighbor, Bob, a man whose personality perfectly matched his beige house, caught me taking out the recycling. Dave," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "Those lights, they're a bit much, aren't they? The wife says they reflect off the chrome trim on our bird bath." "Sorry, Bob," I said, not sounding sorry at all. "Just a little personal expression." Karen, meanwhile, was mobilizing. A laminated petition appeared on the community notice board near the mailboxes, titled, "Restore Aesthetic Sanity to Oak Haven." It cited visual pollution, potential epileptic triggers, and general tackiness unbecoming of our community. Last I checked, it had exactly 3 signatures: Karen, Karen's husband, who always looked terrified, and someone named A Neighbor in suspiciously Karen-esque handwriting. The neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Karen posted blurry nighttime photos, captioned with dramatic warnings about declining property values. Someone else posted a video of the lights set to Bee Gees music. Not me, I swear, but I applauded their initiative. There were arguments about HOA rules, freedom of expression, and whether sunset metallic was really that offensive a color to begin with. It was glorious chaos. Feeling emboldened, I called Gus. "Gus, my man, the lights are a hit, but I was thinking, could we refine the experience?" "Refine?" Gus sounded intrigued. "What kind of refinement we talkin', Davo? More lights, lasers, fog machine?" No, something more, targeted. Can we make them motion activated? But like, only if the motion comes from across the street?" Gus was silent for a second, then burst out laughing. "Psychological warfare, I love it. Yeah, man, we can totally rig a directional sensor. Point it right at her porch. She steps outside, bam, disco inferno, brilliant." Gus came back the next afternoon. Phase 2 deployment, he called it, and installed a discrete sensor aimed directly at Karen's front door and walkway. We tested it. I hid behind my curtains while Gus walked across my lawn. Nothing. Then he jogged across the street and stepped onto Karen's pristine concrete path. Instantly, the tangerine dream erupted in its full, seizure-inducing, multicolored glory. It was perfect. That evening, Karen stepped out to get her mail. The moment her foot hit the sidewalk, my driveway lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. She froze, startled, then glared daggers at my house before snatching her mail and scurrying back inside. The lights shut off as soon as she closed her door. Petty? Absolutely. Effective? Hilariously so. Predictably, this led to Police Interaction #2. This time, only one cruiser showed up, and the officer who got out looked even more tired than Officer 1 from the first visit. "Evening, sir," she sighed, not even waiting for me to turn off the lights, which had activated the moment Karen stormed out to meet the police car. Got another call. Lights again. Evening, officer, I said politely. Just my security system. Motion activated, you see? Deters squirrels. Karen, standing beside the officer, was practically apoplectic. He's targeting me. It only goes off when I come outside. It's harassment. The officer looked at me. I shrugged innocently. It's a wide-angle sensor, officer. Picks up movement over there. Maybe she should move less? The officer pinched the bridge of her nose. Sir, while it's still technically on your property, deliberately using it to annoy your neighbor could potentially edge into harassment territory. Can you adjust the sensitivity, or maybe point the sensor slightly differently? I'll see what I can do, officer, I said solemnly. Karen shrieked in frustration. The officer gave her a sympathetic but helpless look, got back in her car, and drove away. I didn't adjust the sensor. Karen's next move was predictable. The HOA. She'd somehow managed to get Agenda Item #4, addressing visual disturbances and light pollution in Oak Haven Estates, added to the monthly meeting. Apparently, her petition, despite its lack of signatures, had generated enough noise, mostly from her, that the board felt obligated to discuss it. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening in the community clubhouse, a sterile room with folding chairs and bad fluorescent lighting. I knew I had to go. This was the final boss battle. I even considered asking Gus to come for moral support, maybe wearing a suit jacket over his tie-dye. He was thrilled by the idea. "The belly of the beast, man," he'd said over the phone. "We gotta go defend artistic freedom. I'll bring my multimeter." I gently suggested maybe he didn't need to come, but appreciated the solidarity. I did, however, park the Tangerine Dream directly outside the clubhouse, angled perfectly so its roof rack was visible through the main window, just in case. The meeting was as thrilling as watching paint dry, but with more passive aggression. We endured minutes on sprinkler regulations and the upcoming pet parade. Then, Agenda Item #4. Karen stood up, clutching a sheaf of papers. She delivered a dramatic monologue about aesthetic harmony, community standards, the sanctity of nighttime darkness, and blatant, targeted visual aggression. She showed her blurry photos again. She might have even teared up slightly when describing how the blue light clashed with her hydrangeas. Mr. Henderson spoke up. "Honestly, Karen, I think it's kind of funny. Adds a bit of character." Bob, my neighbor, mumbled. "It does reflect off the bird bath quite strongly." Another neighbor asked if the lights could be rented out for parties. Then it was my turn. I stood up, hands clasped behind my back. "Esteemed neighbors, HOA board members," I began, channeling a seriousness I definitely didn't feel. Let's be clear about how this started. It started because my car, painted a perfectly legal, factory-standard color sunset metallic, was deemed an eyesore by one resident. I looked pointedly at Karen. "This resident," I continued, "suggested I repaint my car beige. When I declined, I received an anonymous, intimidating letter. My response, 'This visual disturbance is simply a creative expression on my own private property. It's solar-powered, making it environmentally conscious.'" I paused for effect. And frankly, I think it adds a certain joie de vivre to the neighborhood. Karen leaped to her feet. "Joie de vivre? It's an affront! It's tacky! It's deliberately provocative! It's disco!" That was my cue. I subtly pulled my phone out of my pocket. Gus had rigged a little remote app for me. As Karen hit the peak of her outrage, her voice cracking, I tapped the icon labeled "Full Send." Through the clubhouse window, the Tangerine Dream exploded into life. Not the gentle fade, not the motion-activated surprise. This was the full arsenal strobing, spinning, color-chasing, disco ball-reflecting glory. I even triggered a 5-second burst of Stayin' Alive from a Bluetooth speaker I'd hidden in the car. The reaction was instantaneous. Gasps, laughter, groans. The HOA president, a bewildered accountant named Stan, started banging his gavel weakly. "Order! Order! Please turn off the spectacle!" Karen stood frozen, bathed in the flashing colored light streaming through the window, her face a mask of pure, incandescent fury. The board, clearly desperate to end the madness, quickly consulted their bylaws binder. Stan cleared his throat. "Well, while the board encourages neighborly consideration, there is no specific rule prohibiting, decorative vehicle lighting on private property, provided it doesn't violate existing noise or public nuisance ordinances." He looked helplessly at Karen, then at me. "Meeting adjourned?" I walked out of the clubhouse into the cool night air, the lights on my car still pulsing gently. I'd won. Utterly, ridiculously won. Life in Oak Haven Estates settled into a new kind of normal. I reprogrammed the lights, mostly sticking to the motion-activated setting aimed at Karen's porch, but occasionally turning them on for holidays, or just because I felt like it. The Tangerine Dream became a local legend. Kids called it the disco car. Karen never spoke to me directly again. She communicated solely through icy glares and the occasional passive-aggressive Facebook post about light trespass. She did, however, file a formal complaint about the color of my recycling bin. It was standard blue, but apparently clashed with her azaleas. I sometimes sit on my porch in the evening, sipping a beer, watching the sunset reflect off the Tangerine Dream's perfectly legal sunset metallic paint. Every now and then, Karen steps outside, triggering the silent, colorful light show. She flinches, glares, and retreats. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it ridiculous? Undeniably. Was it worth it? Every single sparkling solar-powered watt. Now about that recycling bin. Gus mentioned something about programmable RGB LED strips that could sync to the weather forecast.